Welcome, friends! This is episode 13 of my Enigmatica 2 Expert Extended Playthrough series, and in the last episode we have designed this awesome Applied Energistics 2 setup, which we are using to generate endstone, and we are sieving the crushed endstone to get many items, but specifically shulker pearls. This gets me really excited when I look at our progress board, because now the only thing stops us from mass producing Spectre coils is figuring out the automation of conglomerate of coal. If we look at the recipe, the conglomerate of coal requires 4 things to be crafted: blackout powder, little black squash balls, tiny pile of heavy fuel dust, and bituminous peat. I would like to actually start with bituminous peat, and for that we'll need to make a peat setup from Forestry. But before we embark on that journey, I would like to address a couple things I mentioned in the previous episode, and specifically that we are running low on a couple of the items. So I would like to create an ender pearl farm, also address carbon brick production, and in addition create a setup for carbon plate productions from carbon brick and not coal, because we have to mine for coal. So let's work on these special tasks first, and especially because the little black squash balls which we'll need for agglomerate of coal are made from carbon bricks, so making carbon bricks will be very useful. But before we dive deep into the crafting, I would like to quickly mention that I have updated my Modpack version to the 1.9.0, and between this episode and the previous one, couple of the version updates happened, and so many things changed. If you would like to see the detailed changes between the Modpack versions, you should visit the GitHub of Krutoy242, and he makes great change logs with lots of explanations, pictures and GIFs in order for you to see what actually changed. So I am pretty excited to learn about all of these new changes. But one change specifically affects something we made in the episode 11. If you look into the sifting systems we created for the copper and the tin production, you'll see that now, in order to use the copper pieces we are creating, we need to throw them into the sear stone to make copper ore, and the same goes for the tin pieces. So this is one change, and then the second change, that when we were making the copper ore pieces in a sieve, before the side product of that was redstone. But now it's a redstone orchid, which again, in order to turn into the redstone ore, we would have to throw that into the sear stone. And we were using redstone in order to power portion of the system, and so we'll have to significantly rework this building. However, we don't have to do this right away, because as you can see, we have amassed quite a lot of resources. We have about 52 stacks of tin, 80 stacks of copper ingots, and bunch of copper ore, as well as the redstone, about 59 stacks. So for now we are set, and I simply stopped the sifting process for the copper and tin, but I will be reworking the system later on. And the last order of business is that for quite some time I have neglected my quest rewards. So let's actually collect them all and take a look at how many reward crates we have. It turns out that we have 8 uncommon crates, and so I can create one more uncommon one, and from the 9 uncommon ones I can create a second rare one. So we have 2 rare crates to open up, and then I'll also open these 3 crates, and I'll save the common ones for later. So let me open them and I'll get back with you. We got ourselves a set of pretty nice items. The first one is this treated wood ladder, and it actually looks really nice and stylish. I'm going to use them somewhere around my base. The second thing we got is this cardboard box, and you can use this to put around the container, then break it, move the container with items anywhere you want, place it, then you can remove the box from the container. Then we got some honey soy ribs, which were never eaten, so this is great. A wind generator. So if we look inside, it says that it produces 88 RF per tick, so this is not too bad, and we can actually put it higher to produce more energy. And finally, we got ourselves a spawner changer. So the way spawner changer works is, if you would like to replicate some mob you found in the wild, you can right click that mob with the spawner changer, then right click on the spawner, and now the spawner will spawn that mob you found. The spawner changer has pretty tricky recipe, so we cannot replicate it right now, and it is of one-time use. However, for us, it gives an opportunity to replicate one particularly tricky mob, so I am really happy with that find, and overall, we found a pretty good set of rewards. Right, with that out of the way, let's go back to building and create ourselves an ender pearl farm. And in order to do this, we'll go back to the quest book and take a look what we need to do in the forestry section. The first thing I'm looking at here is the flexible casing. Flexible casing has a pretty simple recipe, and so we'll craft 5 of them just to be sure we have extras. We can take a look at the uses of the flexible casings, and here you'll see all the farm types you can craft with them. So for example, you can make tree farm, crop farm, peat farm, and we'll get back to this one, mushroom farm, melon and pumpkin farm, nether wart farm, and finally the one we are looking for, chorus flower and ender lily farm. And ender lilies produce ender pearls. And for the ender farm, we need these ender electron tubes, and these require a couple eyes of ender. So I was looking at our mob drop and general loot container, and I saw that we have just 4 ender pearls left. So we were cutting it awfully close. However, now that we have these ender electron tubes, my hope is that we can build a farm, automate the ender lily production, and never worry about ender pearls ever again. The last piece we need is the basic circuit board, and we actually have a quest for that. And the quest description is very important because it explains how you can use a soldering iron to work on the circuit boards, and I think we'll do some of that in the future. But for now, let's just craft a couple. We can now craft the ender farm. Forestry machines are very good at explaining exactly how you need to use them, even if you have never used them before. So in this case, if we right click on ender farm, the first thing it tells us that it has no power. Once the power is connected, and we do this again with 4 survival generators and LV capacitor below the farm, now it complains that it doesn't have fertilizer. So let's add some. Next, you can see on the left side that some endstone is also required as the input. After we add it, we can see that the endstone gets inserted around the farmer. However, we can speed up this process with time in a bottle. Now we can add the things we are going to plant to the farm. In this case, we are going to be planting ender lilies, and I have checked my containers and found 3 seeds, and I will plant them to the north. And this is the north side, and you can see all of these ender lilies got planted, and they will start growing. Ender lilies grow quite slow, and the time in the bottle or a supremium watering can doesn't actually speed up the growth. So let's see where we can get more of these ender lily seeds. One of the options would be to craft them through the use of the ender fragments, which require 9 ender pearl powders, and we could get them from sifting garbage piles, and 91 ender pearl powders will net us 1 ender lily. But another way would be to actually travel around. If we break medium grass or short grass in the overworld, we are getting ender lily with pretty small, around 0.1% chance. However, if we scroll here to the Twilight forest, then breaking a regular grass in the Twilight forest actually gets us ender lily with 1.22% chance. And this is a pretty high percent chance, so let's try that. In order to get to the Twilight forest, you need to dig up a 2x2 pool, fill it with water, surround it with flowers, and once you're done, throw in a single piece of diamond in it. Once we jump into the pool, we'll find ourselves in a Twilight forest. One particular thing about the Twilight forest is that if you have any items that allow you to flight in your inventory, they'll get dropped on the ground, and it will be quite hard to get them back home, because as soon as you pick them up and try to jump into the portal, the items will be dropped again. So this is why I have taken off my elytra, and I just forgot to take off my glider, but I'll try to bring it home. If you don't have any other means to get back home with the exception of this portal, then it is a good idea to go into the journey map and add a new waypoint and call it portal to be able to get back home. Now, even if the Twilight Forest energy has clipped our wings, we still have our impulsion wand, and we can use that to move around quickly. Standing on this very tall tree, we can look around, and the first thing we see is the Lich's castle. And I also spotted a structure over there behind the trees. However, let's keep our eyes on the prize here. And the first thing we want to do in the Twilight Forest, if we follow the quest guide, is craft a blank magic map. And for that, we'll need this magic map focus, which we can create from glowstone, torchberries, and raven feather. Here is the first structure I found, and right away we get some torchberries from killing the skeleton druids. Also, here in the Twilight Forest, I have found my very first patch, and if you don't know, the patch, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, are the creatures which can be traded with if you throw them these items on the left, and you can trade with them and get a bunch of useful items. And this one is a little bit damaged, and the reason for it is that I was actually wearing my Skystone armor, and when I got close to him, he started exploding and tried to attack me. Once we get the diamonds to trade, we'll definitely get back into the Twilight Forest for these trades. I was going home to grab the glowstone, and I noticed that I can show you another way of getting torchberries other than killing the skeleton druids. And this is by just finding these torchberry plants that grow underground. And if you harvest them, they drop some torchberries. I went back home to get some glowstone, and now we can craft a magic map. We can use this map to locate all of the biomes around the Twilight Forest, as well as the most important buildings, for example, like the Lich's Tower, which is to the northwest of us. Let's also collect our rewards for this discovery. Of the two items, the Traveler's Sack is especially useful as it acts as an additional inventory where we can store the items. But going back to the map we found, we will definitely explore the Twilight Forest later, but for right now let's concentrate on the ender lilies we wanted to find. To help us do that, let's harvest a single piece of grass using a comma, throw this into the mana pool to get pasture seeds, and combine them with living wood to get Horn of the Wild. Horn of the Wild is a very useful item. If you stand in a field of grass and right-click Horn of the Wild, all of the grass around you will get destroyed, and the items, as you can see, are floating around us. In terms of the size, the grass will be collected in 25 by 25 block square centered at the player. In order to grow the grass quickly, I'm using our scythe, which we crafted in episode 5. It has the fertilizing trait on it, which allows us to grow the grass like this. And if we ever want to repair it, I have installed a tool station with a bunch of stone in it, so we can quickly repair our scythe and continue growing the grass. So after a couple of minutes doing that, we actually have a couple of the ender lilies floating around. Let me do some more harvesting. Doing this is quite a little bit tedious, and I found out that I get about 1 ender lily per minute, and I was collecting them for about 8 minutes here. Let me collect 2 more and we'll be going back home. I have used up almost all of my cobblestone to repair my scythe as I grow the grass, and we have leveled my scythe quite a bit. But now I have 11 ender lilies, and the last one, the 11th one, actually took me about 5 minutes to collect, so don't get discouraged if you can't find one. Eventually you will stumble upon it. As I was collecting the ender lilies, actually a patch mage spawned near beside me and attacked me, and once I killed it, it dropped this patch wand. Let's take a look what happens if I right click it. Oh, apparently I cannot fathom the workings of this yet. Well, we'll see to it that we'll check onto this wand later. If we look at our ender lilies back home, you'll see that they're almost done growing, and this is because the growth stage of the ender lilies, I believe, depends on the time passed and not if you have area loaded or not. So let's put our 11 ender lilies into the ender farm, and as you can see, all of them are getting planted. And so the hope is that when the ender lily gets harvested by the farm, it will produce additional ender lily seeds, and this will help our ender lilies spread around, and soon we have this whole farm covered with ender lilies. Another thing I would like to quickly mention in terms of the things we brought back from the forest. Back in episode 9, we were working on these plugman lunches, and we have used root of eggs to craft them, and root of eggs require dandelion yellow. And so using this method of growing grass and harvesting it yields huge amount of yellow flowers. So we could apply this method in order to get lots of these yellow dyes instead of doing what we did and planting lots of these colored mystical agriculture flowers. Now that the ender pearl farm is done, let's take a look into carbon bricks and carbon plates. Since I'll make the carbon bricks from charcoal, I'll highlight how I make charcoal again. I mentioned this a couple times, but this is my charcoal burning kiln, and this is where I burn my wood piles, and then I harvest the ash using the Skystone Ardite excavator, and it has global traveler trait. So everything I mine goes into this drawer controller and gets distributed between this basic drawer and this compacting drawer. Currently, I have 292 double compressed charcoal in it. So let's take a look what will happen if I'll harvest this whole pile of the ash to the bottom. So let's see. So as you can see, harvesting the full kiln worth of charcoal gives us 294 double compressed charcoal. Let's say we take about a stack of this charcoal and then place it in the world, and then use our Skystone sledgehammer to harvest it. Then, as you can see, we got ourselves about 9 stacks of these carbon bricks. So using the kiln is a great way to create these carbon bricks quickly. But still this way is not automated, and to fully automate it, I would like to progress through Forestry some more towards the farms quest. First, let's make some tin electron tubes. 160 tin gives us 2 stacks of these tin electron tubes, and while we're at it, I crafted also additional 4 golden electron tubes. The quest for farms requires some specific knowledge about the multi-block structure sizes, therefore it has the link to the ftbwiki.org for the multi-farm here at the bottom. However, the multi-block farm itself is pretty straightforward device to work with, and to build it we will need the farm hatch, the farm valve, and the farm gearbox, and all of these things require tin gear and the farm blocks, which we'll craft. And then the farm control is also a block that requires a golden electron tube, which we crafted just a little bit earlier. So for all of these blocks, you'll need to build these farm blocks, and they have a pretty straightforward recipe, with tin electron tubes being the most costly component, and we will actually craft 2 stacks of these farm blocks. When crafting the farm blocks, you can put this middle block and it will define the appearance of the block. I decided to go with the mossy stone bricks, and this is because they have a pretty cheap recipe and a distinct look. And in the recipe, the vines can be crafted from 3 nature essences, so I have plenty of this, and therefore this recipe is pretty cheap. The second thing I didn't realize about this is that instead of actually getting 1 farm block per recipe, we get 12 in this mod pack. So it looks like in this pack you can start with multi-block farms pretty early. Now that I have all of the components, let's finish the quest and visit the building area. I have decided to build my multi-block forestry farm just by my canola farm over at the far side of my base. I will be using the biggest, which is 5x5x4 size multi-block structure, and if you would like to build any other structure, then you should check out the wiki for the specific layout, but here is layout for mine. First, you will need to build a platform on top of which your plants or trees will grow. I have built mine out of the mossy bricks just to match the appearance of my farm blocks, and I started with building 4 5x6 wings surrounding the central 5x5 block area. Next, you fill in the spaces between these wings diagonally and your platform is ready. Next, I have dug the middle inside, and I will replace it with the farm blocks to build 5x5x4 multi-structure in the middle. Here's how it looks like, and you know it worked because if I right-click the structure, it says that the farm must have a gearbox to accept power and do work. Since we will have to connect to the farm, I have set up an access to the farm blocks underground. Let's get rid of these 4 blocks on the left and attach farm control, farm gearbox, farm hatch, and finally farm valve. If everything was done correctly, you can click any of the blocks of the multi-structure to open the farm interface. Inside this interface, you will find a lot of information about the farm operation. The most important bit is this empty socket over here. Into this socket, you can place a circuit board with various electron tubes inside, and the type of electron tube defines what's growing on a plant. For example, if you'll take a circuit board with 4 obsidian electron tubes, you'll be growing peat in the peat bog. However, by default, if you don't place any circuit board inside the socket, you will have a managed arboretum, meaning you will be growing trees on the farm, and this is what we need. So I'm not going to place any circuit boards in the socket. Next, we have a water input and the water meter on the left side. So we'll have to use this valve in order to pump the water into the farm. To solve the water situation, let's craft 16 omnivoires from Ender.io and take a look at its potential uses in the JEI. And as you can see, one of them is to take molten lapis and fill the omnivoire with it, and the result is Enderware. And if you look at the description, it says that it is an infinite reservoir of water. At our current progression stage in this pack, the only way to get molten lapis for us is to melt a native lapis lazuli cluster inside the smeltery, and therefore we will have to go back into our Thummonomicon and research metal purification. In order to finish this research, we would need to spend 2 theory of alchemy, and to do this, we would have to go into the research table and create a new theory, a process that I highlighted in an episode 10 of my series. However, there is an alternative way of doing this. Here is my cabinet where I store Thaumcraft related items. And here there are a couple of things which I found in the world. These are ancient curiosities, and at the bottom you can see that this one, for example, gives Golimancy progress, this one gives Auromancy progress, and here is Artifice progress. And these preserved curiosities, which look like pieces of ember, they give alchemy progress. You can find them if you mine ember in the world. Alternatively, you can find them from finishing quests. For example, when I finished the quest of alchemical brass, there was a choice of 60 of them, and then for thaumium there is also a choice of 60 of them. Looking at our research progress, we see that we have a bunch of observations which we get from scanning items, but we have 0 theories. I have grabbed myself 16 preserved curiosities. Let's right click on them. Now, if we go back to Thummonomicon and look at our theory progress, we actually got ourselves 8 theories of alchemy and 1 theory of artifice, along with a bunch of observational knowledge. This means that the preserved curiosities are a great source of theory of alchemy and some other theories here and there. Let's complete the metal purification. So now the only thing we need is to get a lapis lazuli ore somewhere. There are multiple ways one can get lapis lazuli ore, and these include lasers, excavations, various meteors, rituals, and miners, and one also can craft a Silk Touch pickaxe or use Tinker's Construct to get a Silk Touch modifier. However, I would like to go a different route and use Psy. In the episode 9 of my series, I have introduced this mod, and we also crafted this casting assistant device, and since then we crafted 2 spells for it, and the first one is a spell called Firestarter, and you can start fires with it. The second spell we crafted was called Smite, and this is to make charge creepers by shooting lightning at them. So now I would like to introduce you to the next spell, which is called Silk Touch, and I didn't craft this spell myself. I found it online, and unfortunately I don't remember the source. As you can see, the spell is pretty complex, and I will explain to you how it works in a second. But first, let's take a look at the right hand side, and we'll immediately see that the spell is too complex for our casting assistant device to handle, and we need to build an improved one. First, let's create a simple spell, which is called Infusion. Write it into the spell bullet, and then insert the spell bullet into our casting assistant device. The infusion spell allows us to convert gold into Psy metal. And just a quick reminder, after casting, our Psy energy shown on the right doesn't recover on its own unless we receive some experience. Of course, later in this pack we'll be able to use various sort of Psy cells to contain the psionic energy and various devices to generate it, but for now we'll just collect experience orbs to replenish it. With just 7 Psy metal ingots, we can craft a brand new overclock cut socket, signaling cut socket, and extended cat battery. But as you can see, even with these improved components, if we install them on the iron CAD assembly, the potency of our device will be 100, while for this specific spell, we need a potency of 143. So we will have to go with the gold CAD assembly, which has a potency of 150, however, it requires a dirty gold. But this is not a problem because we have plenty crystals in our crystal bag. We need 20 order, 20 metallum, and 4 gold ores. We need to automate the starlight production at some point, but for now, let's just grab ourselves a liquid starlight bucket, throw it in here, and then throw a native gold cluster inside. And it transforms into the crystallized gold shard. 4 of these shards give us a piece of crystallized gold, and then if we throw it in the furnace, we can get a dirty gold. With that, our gold CAD assembly can be finally crafted, and now we can create a gold casting assistant device, and I decided to dye it yellow just to celebrate that. And now we can craft the Silk Touch bullet. Like I've said before, we can refill our pool of psi energy if we collect some experience. As you can see now it's filled. However, in order to carry that experience orbs with us when we are mining underground, we can put an XP drain on top of a fluid tank, jump on it to drain some of this experience, and then throw in a couple bottles into that tank to collect bottles of enchanting, and we can use that as our portable XP orbs. So how does the Silk Touch spell works? First, we use the trick to move the block, and we move it in the direction of the normal to the face we are looking at. Then, after the block is moved, we use the trick of collapsing a block, and this transforms the block into the falling sand-like behavior. Then finally, the last trick is to conjure a light under this falling block, and when the block hits the light, the block will be destroyed and dropped as an item. Suppose we need to collect this block of obsidian. My pickaxe is not really modified for speed, so if we use a pickaxe on this block, it takes a lot of time to collect it. However, if we take our cast assisting device and we select a Silk Touch, the block is collected really fast. As you can see, the block moved, then dropped like sand onto the light below it, and now we can collect it as an item. But of course, the main reason for this spell is to collect the blocks which would be destroyed otherwise. For example, for the lapis lazuli ore, we can collect the ore and not the lapis lazuli. Unfortunately, for some reason, the texture really doesn't show it for me, but if I place it back, you can see it's still a lapis lazuli ore block. Before we convert this ore into the native lapis lazuli clusters, as you know, we'll need some source of order, and I believe the Order V crystals is a good source. You can create them by mixing carbon bricks and quartz slivers inside the alchemic condenser. However, when I was almost ready to craft the native lapis lazuli clusters, I ran into the problem. So let's say I put the 5 order and 5 metallum into my crucible. When I right click with that ore onto the crucible, nothing happens. But if I do the same with the gold ore, I can get a native cluster. So unfortunately, this lapis lazuli ore, which doesn't generate a texture, doesn't work. And this makes me want to remind everyone that in such a complex mod pack, there are bound to be some issues which are still unresolved. And in fact, this doesn't have to be a mod pack issue. This could be a particular mod issue, for example, for the Psy mod. And if something like this happens to you, the best course of action is of course trying to search about the issue yourself, and maybe you'll find a solution. But if not, you can always connect with the author of the pack, Krutoy242, on Enigmatica 2 Expert Extended Discord, or submit an issue to the GitHub of the same mod pack. Alright, I tried to be clever in getting lapis lazuli ore, but since that didn't work, let's try the boring way. If you type silk in the GAI, it would seem that you have 2 options to get Silk Touch. The first option is the Silk Touch enchantment. It is worthwhile to apply Silk Touch enchantment only to the tools like a Thaumium pickaxe, which is easily crafted and has a durability of 500, and you can also buy it from Patch. And the reason for it is that other vanilla tools, as you can see, the mining with them is disabled and they have just durability of 1. The second option you see is to craft a silky jewel, and this is a modifier from the Tinker's construct which gives your tool a Silk Touch ability. However, in order to craft it, you will need to do a silky cloth, and a silky cloth requires a silk wisp, which you can get from a silky propolis, And these things can be acquired from silky combs, which at this point we can only buy from apiarist in the village. But I'm going to show you a third option. If we take a look into the materials and U-book, you will see that if we make a tool head of a rubber, it gains a squeaky trait. And this means that your tool loses ability to do damage to the mobs, but it will gain the ability to get silk touch. To craft a pickaxe which is capable of silk touch, I will add a rubber pickaxe head, ardite binding, and living wood tool rod. And in order to improve its mining level, I will use the Maniyulin sharpening kit with a piece of flint. Now, if we put these ugly lapis lazuli ore blocks which we are collected, we can use this pickaxe to collect all of them as normal lapis lazuli ores. I had to go back down into the mine and find myself one more lapis lazuli ore block, but now we can craft 8 native lazuli lapis clusters. To work with them, I have crafted this smaller version of the smeltery, which is called melter. You can read about the melter in the materials and U-book, and then to craft the melter, you will need the sear tank, the smeltery controller, and a bunch of seared bricks. The reason to have a separate melter is because these native lapis lazuli clusters, they are melting at 1331 Kelvin, and if we take a look at the Enigmatica Expert Extended book, we'll see that the lava bucket only produces the temperature of 1300. So in order to melt these native clusters, we'll need to bump the temperature to at least 1400s and use a creosote oil instead. The melter works just like a smeltery, but for one material. You put the fluid here in the bottom tank, then you go into the melter and you put your items in. And here I will kill 2 birds with 1 stone and show you that if you get 4 molten iron ingots and then you put a clear glass and pour them over the clear glass, you will get fluid tank from Ender.io. This is a new recipe which I didn't highlight yet in my series. So now we can take this newly crafted fluid tank, slap it on top of the melter and set it to pull the fluid from the melter, and then add our native lapis lazuli clusters. Once the tank is full, we can harvest it and move it to our smeltery. So if we put it over here, then as you can see the fluid is being transferred to the smeltery, and we have our casting basin here. The omnivoires are pushed from this crate into this empty basin, and so once we pour the molten lapis over the omnivoire, we can transform it into the endervoire. Going back to our forestry farm seems like a million years later. We can put 4 of these endervoirs in a square like this, then fill 2 of them with water, and as you can see now the whole endervoire is full and it will produce infinite water. So then we'll take a crescent hammer and tell the endervoire to output water into our farm valve. We can now see that the farm is full of water but is lacking power. I have now powered the farm gearbox with a couple survival generators attached to the LV capacitors. And I promise you, once I get to the Spectre coil, I will stop using these stupid survival generators. But for now, this will do. And now if we look at the farm, it complains that it doesn't have a fertilizer. And the next thing we'll need is some dirt and some saplings. And as you can see, the dirt has started planting and the water is being used for it. And also it uses quite a bit of fertilizer to fertilize the dirt. And from the top we can see that the water was mixed with the fertilizer and it converted the dirt into humus. And now the saplings have been planted on the humus. And just like that, our farm is now automatically planting and then harvesting trees. And as you can see, all of the drops are being collected. And if we look at the farm interface, they are all deposited in here. However, right now there is nowhere for them to go. I have set these 6 drawers over here and I hooked them up using the X-net to our farm hatch down there. And now I have a place to store the exported items and to get the items from in order to feed the farm. And obviously the controller for all of this is located all the way here by the smeltery. It's the same one which I use for iron production. And in this controller you can see the farm, the export and the import, and all of the 6 drawers are over here and I can control them from here. Now that we have our wood production in place, I have built 8 coke ovens and I have built them in this twisted pattern. And the reason is I wanted to save on the connectors because they are so damn expensive. But now with the coke ovens, I can take the wood from my production, compress it into the single compressed wood, and send them into one of these 8 coke ovens to be burned into a block of charcoal and creosote oil. The creosote oil is getting sent into this fluid tank and pushed into the smeltery, so now I'm powering the smeltery using creosote and not a canola oil. And sorry Smasher, I'll use your skills in some other setups later. But then the charcoal which we get from here is getting sent into this compressor over here, and this compressor compresses the charcoal in the carbon bricks. Everything here is powered by the same controller from XNet and doesn't use too much energy, and this gives us fully automated carbon bricks. Looking back at our progress board, we can definitely tell that we automated carbon bricks, and I believe we will have to do the carbon plates later. They are not directly related to the conglomerate of coal we are crafting, so we'll save that for later, and we'll concentrate on a peat setup instead. We will have our peat setup right next to our ender farm, and I realized that I forgot to do this on camera. When I opened it up, I harvested almost 2 full stacks of ender pearls and 11 ender lily seeds. So as you can see, our farm is producing nice harvest, it's growing quickly, and we should have everything here planted in ender lily seeds in no time. Peat farm has a pretty easy recipe with obsidian electron tubes, and it works similar to the ender farm over there in that it requires power. Again, we supply it with survival generators. Then it needs fertilizer, which we can place on top, and then, because it creates a peat bog, we also need an infinite source of water. In this case, we'll use ender bars again, so when we fill this with the 2 buckets worth of water, it fills it all and it's an infinite water source. So now, if we pump the water into the farm, as you can see, this farm automatically digs the holes in the dirt and then fills them with water. The next step is not entirely obvious because the farm needs some sort of dark brownish blocks, and the GAI doesn't exactly tell you what these are. Required blocks are actually called bog earth, and they have lots of various recipes, and you can also automate them in Carpenter if you use mulch. However, we will use this simple recipe that requires water, and 1 bucket worth of water gives you 6 of these blocks. But we are not going to use buckets, we will capitalize on the fact that we have an almost infinite supply of tin, and we will use water cans instead. Back at the peat farm, let's load this up, and as you can see, it started to get added around the water which was dug up earlier. This could be as interesting as watching the paint dry, but once in a while. One of these pieces of bog earth will be converted into the peat and dug up automatically, and when this happens, it is transformed to the peat brick and the piece of dirt. So you get the dirt back and you can convert this dirt back into peat bog and submit it to be planted. With that, we are done with our current task of making peat setup, and we are very close to finishing it all by crafting spectre coil. And for this, we only need to automate conglomerate of coal, for which we require blackout powder, for which we will need to automate basically byproducts of canola production, which is a biocoal. Also work on creation of tiny piles of heavy fuel, which are made from heavy mix lump, which require a propolis. And finally, making bituminous coal, for which we already have the peat, but we will need propolis again. But this story will have to be told some other time. For now, I really hope that you are liking the series so far, and I would love to hear from you in the comments, as your support for this playthrough really keeps me going. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Same place.